Hey everyone, this is Gnogart. So last time I showed you my Bystial Fiendsmith Primite deck profile with Metalmorph and such. And since then we've playtested a bit with the deck, also against Ryziel and Malice. And I also saw the Fiendsmith Kastira deck and obviously took some reasonings from them. And I wanted to give you an update for the deck list. So I'll go over the deck and keep it brief with like the cards and focus more on the roles they have, and then go right into some interactions the deck has, because there's some cool stuff that I haven't shown you in the last video. So let's just hop right into it. Alright, so a little switch of the camera, and here we are with the deck profile. You can already see the Lacrima, so let's start with the main deck here. We now run 3 of that. It's same logic as the Fiendsmith Kastira deck. You can't stop this normal summon with just one hand trap, which is very, very good in a deck that tries to simplify the game state and grind. So we no longer run the Red Eyes package here. Again, if a bigger Fiendsmith package is out of your budget, just go back to 2-1 and run the Red Eyes stuff. It raises the ceiling quite a bit, but this particular list is focused on having a high floor. So 3 Lacrima here. And I also upped the engraver ratio to 2. There's 1 flex slot in the deck. I'll get to it later, so maybe I'd run a 3rd, but for now I'm on 2. And then 2 tracked and the Lurry with it. No Sanct anymore. Although Sanct has some nice applications, because if you have a free Send with Lacrima, you can send Sanct, and then Send actually has a second effect to reset it. The fact that Sanct doesn't put a light fiend in the grave was enough to make me cut the card. So that's the Fiendsmith starters, and then we run the Fiendsmith in Paradise. Took that obviously from the Kastira lists. Just really, really good. If you get interrupted, you still have something like this. So that's it for the Fiendsmith part. Now to the Bystial, still a key component of the deck. So we run 3 Bystial Lubellion, but the core of the Bystials has changed. We now run 1 Magnamut, 2 Druid's Worm, 1 Boldrake, 1 Saronir. We cut down on the Saronirs because we no longer have another body outside of the Bystials themselves to tribute for Lubellion. So sending a Lubellion with the Saronir is no longer that required for our combos. Instead, we upped the Druid's Worm, because Druid's Worm is just really, really good. Even like in looking at the next meta with Ryziel, with their monsters having destruction protection, having a Send that also takes a resource from their grave is pretty nice. This would be the flex slot. If you want to run a 3rd engraver, you can cut the 2nd Druid's Worm, play the other engraver, and then just have the one of each Bystial lineup. And of course, we run the Branded Regained as our value engine. Really, really funny interaction with Malice. On their turn, because they are the turn player, if they banish their Malice monster, that would be chaining 1 to resummon itself, and you can go chain link to Branded Regain to shuffle it into the deck and draw 1 card. So you draw 1 card and you deny them their Malice summon. Really, really funny. In general, Bystials against Malice are weird, because you kind of only can banish Malices that already have used their effects. They're still nice for you to get big bodies on board, but the banish effect is, you have to be careful with those. For the Primite engine, we are back to 3 Lode, because we decided to run a 2nd Roar. So now, even if you draw 2 of those, or you draw a combination of these 2, you can still activate the Lode. I decided to up the Roar to 2 because our targets are better now than the What Dragon before, and also this card is not once per turn. So what you'll do often is you're gonna go the first Roar for a White Dust Storm, go into a Fiendsmith, and then you go Requiem effect, check for hand traps, and then you can chain this, because now your field is clear, right? You can chain the other one to get out the 2nd target out of the deck. So no detriment to running 2. The only exception is, like, the only downside of running 2 is the steep life point cost of 2000. Generally, Ryziel doesn't OTK that easily from what I've seen, but if you lower yourself by 2,000 or 4,000 life points, you make it easier for them to kill you. So keep that in mind. For our targets, the new one is Alexandrite Dragon. Now there's a lot of reasons. I'll just put the white dust on here. You know, it's the only light fiend normal monster we have. But Alexandrite Dragon, there's a lot of reasons why we run this now. First of all, we cut the rank 6s out of the extra deck, so we don't need a rank 6, a level 6 target anymore. This card can be normal summoned, so it's not a brick, obviously it's just a vanilla, but if you draw this with a Bystial, for example, you can normal summon this, go into Striker, summon the Bystial, and then go into Moon and do your Fiendsmith stuff from there, so you will have a play as opposed to just having the level 6. And then also, because it's level 4, you can actually have options to go into rank 4 plays. I'll show you in the combos later, but that's also very important, especially against Shifter. So Alexandrite Dragon, small note on the side, it can be normal summoned and run over SP for what it's worth, but that's the least relevant reason to run it as opposed to the other ones. Also, it being level 4 means that you can make Chaos Angel with this and Necrocrypt or a Bystial. Also very, very nice. Chaos Angel, really, really good against the Ryziel as well, because they have the Hole Thruster, I think, and Imperm as their outs. In-engine outs, kind of hard to come by because they're a rank 4 spam deck. Non-engine, you know how I do it in this channel. I just like to put the standard hand traps in just so you have a core to work with. Now, noteworthy is that this deck likes having hand traps because you draw a lot with Necroquip and Branded Regained. So drawing into hand traps obviously is good here as opposed to drawing into board breakers. But if your particular local meta likes board breakers or like books are quick spells, you can draw into those. Feel free to try things out. I just like to have like a shell that works easily. So Nibiru, same reasoning as last profile, is Nibiru just lowers the ceiling of decks, so it really helps you to survive. If you nuke a board, right? Maybe some decks can play, make another board after it, but it'll be smaller and maybe they'll not kill you. So really, really nice for getting you into the grind game. And the last hand trap, this was draw before, but Ogre was really, really good in testing. Ogre on the duo drive, for example, if they let you. Really, really punishing. They lose their body. They don't get the search because they have to detach to search. And it's also light for what it's worth. So if you go second, you hand trap something, you have a target to banish with the Bystials. Can shuffle back or regained. Yeah. So that's it for the main deck. Clean 40 this time. And let's go into the extra. Now, you saw the Requiem. I've played obviously 2 Requiem now. I ordered the Requiem like a week ago. Still hasn't arrived, so bear with me. This is a placeholder for the second Requiem. The deck doesn't really function without Requiem, so if it gets Kashtira unicorned, that's bad for you. But also this gives you some leeway in banishing the Requiem with a Bystial if you have to, because you have a second one in extra deck anyway. So 2 is pretty much good. Next up for the Fiendsmith cards, we have the Sequence, 1 Agnonday, and 1 Desiree. Now, a lot of the Kashtira Fiendsmith players played 2 Desiree as well. This has 2 reasons. First of all, again, Unicorn, but if you have 2 Desiree, then they would banish the Sequence instead, right? And then you can't access the Desiree anyway. So you'd have to play 2 and 2, and I don't have the space for that. So I decided, okay, I'm keeping it at 1. Also, the other reason to run 2 Desiree is if you want to make a Desiree and also have branded, not branded, Fiendsmith in Paradise live, right? You have 1 Desiree on the board, 1 in the extra deck to send. That's an option to play a second one, but for space issues and because we don't run the second Sequence, I thought it was not worth it, but feel free to cut one of the other cards if you want to run a second Desiree. And then rerun the Moon. This is actually not super important in this deck. You don't make it very often, but for example the Alexandrite plus Bystial line, and also getting from your Bystial engine into Fiendsmith stuff is nice. Plus, if you want to clear your board for roar, like you nibbed your opponent, you cannot roar because you have a monster on the field. Summon a hand trap, make Moon, and then you can do the Requiem chain roar effect in that case. So Moon is nice, but it's not mandatory by any means here. And then we run the Necroquip and the Caesar to make the Caesar play our preferred turn 1 play. We run one Desiree, so we want to keep the first one for the Paradise play turn 1. Also, Necroquip gets triggered by Lubellion, and if your opponent uses hand traps, and if you discard a Fiendsmith, so you very often get a draw off this as well. So, pretty nice. Not only a Link 1. For the Dragon part, we have cut it down to just the Striker and the Seals. Striker is there to get the Alexandrite in the graveyard for multiple lines, and then the Seals is Seals. Only one Seals. You can just, if you want more Seal, if you want to go Seals again, usually when you go into Seals, you have access to your branded engine, so your Bystial engine. So you will just, what you can do is you just banish this with the Bystial, and with branded regain shuffle it back if you really need it, but it's not mandatory. Your recursion usually comes from the Fiendsmith cards in the later game. Then we have IP and SP. A lot of people have told me like maybe you can cut the IP. It's not mandatory for many lines, but this is the only Link 2 in our engine that you can just do with random vanillas on board. Like if your opponent nibs you, you can make this. Or if you have an Alexandrite dragon over but you don't have a second dragon, you can't make Seals, you can just make IP. So I like it here, and obviously SP is very, very good. Note that SP can also banish from your own graveyard in certain lines if you want to trigger Branded Regained and draw another card. So that's also neat. And then we have the flex ones. Chaos Angel, I think this is just really, really good. Super easy to make in this deck. Really good against Ryziel, so I would definitely run this. Typhon, I really like in this deck in general because this deck likes to play simplified game states, but also in the next meta, slapping a Typhon on board turns off Detonator. You cannot summon any monsters anymore after that, and they can use the field spell to negate the Typhon effect to bounce Detonator, so you have to bait that out, but still it's pretty nice for that matchup still, and you don't combo off that much, right? You do your plays, then you slap a Typhon on board, try to out something else, and again this is recyclable with Regained because it's a dark, so sometimes you just banish this. Like, you have Regained, you summon a Bystial, banish this, shuffle it back, slap this on the Bystial, and keep running over your opponent's board. And the last slot is Baguska. Now, this is one of the reasons why we switched to Alexandrite Dragon. Baguska is level 4. You can make this by overlaying the Alexandrite and Lacrima. Really easy to make. I'll show you in a second. And if you get shifted, one Lode can just slap a Baguska on board. And it's better than nothing, right? And there are other lines where you can make Baguska backed up with some interactions in the graveyard like Roar and Fiendsmith Paradise. So if Baguska is really good in that matchup and you just slap this down, and even if they out it, you have 2 more interruptions based off of 1 Lode, I think that's really, really strong. Alright, I've teased a lot of the combos, so let's just show you some. Before we get into the first combo, I have a very important ruling to talk about regarding Primite Lode Lubellion. When I showed the combos to people, I've got this question a lot, and that being the last part of the Lode effect. And that says, also you cannot activate the effects of special summon monsters on the field this turn. Now, you would think, okay, if I do Fiendsmith stuff, I cannot use the second effect to summon a body. That is not correct. You can do all your stuff, all your monster effects on the field, special summon monsters, then use the effect to summon something, because the restriction of Lode is not a condition, it's part of the effect, so it only applies after you used the effect. So everything before that doesn't matter. Just once you use that, obviously you cannot use the Caesar anymore if they nib you. So keep that in mind, and now we get to the first combo. With that out of the way, let's jump into the first combo, Lode plus Lubellion. So you're going to activate Lode, add the Roar. Now if they droll you here, you still have access to a Fiendsmith line, which is still pretty good, and your opponent basically lost the card in hand. Lubellion won't do anything unless you already have a Bystial, but let's just assume they don't have the role here. So you're going to activate Roar, call White Dust on, summon it, and then link it off into Requiem, use Requiem effect. Now, if they ash you here, you can still go Lubellion for a Bystial, Lode for the Alexandrite, make seals. That should be decent with the regained plus the Magnamut add. But let's just have this go through. Summon Lacrima effect. Now if they imperm here, you can still obviously do the Bystial stuff. You can still get the Alexandrite Dragon, make Baguska if you want to, or you just leave the Lacrima in the grave with the Requiem to paralyze your opponent in the opponent's turn. So really resilient into hand traps, but let's just send one off of this, being the engraver. Now you're going to equip the Requiem to the Lacrima and then send it off for a Necroquip. This is the point where you want to use the Lubellion, add a Bystial, which triggers the Necroquip and draws you a card. It's pretty nice. Now you will use the engraver effect. Now here you have a choice to make. You need a light or dark in the grave to banish off of the Bystial if you want to play that. So if the engraver would shuffle the dust on here, you would have to get rid of one of these. However, if you shuffle one of these back and your opponent nibs you on this point, then you will never have the backup plan of this in the grave. So that's a decision you have to make here. And there's another line I'll show you in a second. For now, let's just shuffle back the White Dust on. Do this and have the engraver out. And now here's usually the point where people would nib you. There's a better point later, but that would require your opponent to think ahead here and know the deck very well. And even then, it's not that punishing. Now, you have the Magnamut. You can activate it and banish one of your backup plans. That's something you can do. Or if you don't want to do that, another line would be to not search Magnamut here, but instead just go into Lode directly to get the Alexandrite and link that Alexandrite into Striker Dragon and then banish the Alexandrite with Magnamut. This, however, cuts you off of the Roar. This will cut you off of Lubellion, setting up the regain, so I don't like that part. I would just, like in this case, give up this part. Usually you have more lights and darks that you can use, or you have another Lubellion or whatever. So you're gonna use the Magnamut, banish one Lacrima, activate the effect, then we go Lubellion, send the Magnamut and use the Lubellion to set up the regained. And here you will use Lode effect, the second one, to summon the Alexandrite Dragon. Now, you turned off your Caesar at this point, so now your opponent actually has another chance to nib you. If they don't here, you make seals, and they nib you on the seals, tribute the seals, you get a dragon out of your deck. If they don't nib you in general, so like, you go like this. But if they do nib you on this point because they held it, because they know the line in and out, and they know you don't have another extender, you will lose this board. You get a token, and the nib would then trigger the regained, which resummons the Magnamut, and then you can link off Magnamut plus the token for IP. This is one of the occasions where you want IP. And in the end phase, your Magnamut will add you a Druid's Worm. So you'll end on IP, you have drawn a card, you have 3 more cards in hand, you have the regained to resummon, and you have the Roar. The second effect says that you can banish it when your opponent normal summons, and then banish a monster with less attack than one of your vanillas. So you can banish something with 2000 or less. And yeah, so even if they use the nib here, you should still be fine. They can also decide to just turn the nib into attack and enter battle phase to run over the IP. You can either go into Summon Druisperm, then link off into SP if you want to do that, but you can also just let them run over the IP, because that means they used up their battle phase and they're not going to kill you that turn. So that's the Lode plus Lubellion line. Alright, so let's combine Lode Lubellion with another starter, being our normal summon Lacrima. Now, I like to keep cards hidden in my hand, so I would first start off by summoning Lacrima here, using the effect, see if my opponent actually wants to answer this. If they don't, you send the Engraver. Then you can activate the Lode to add Roar. And now what you're going to do is link off the Lacrima, of course, into Requiem effect, and then chain to the Requiem effect the Roar. And you will get an Alexandrite Dragon, and then from the Requiem you'll get another Lacrima or an Engraver, whatever fits your board at the time. This was the last chance to actually use the Roar, even though like we'll use this very late in the combo. This is what you want to do here. You can also, in this case, if you have a very good matchup into, if you have a very good Bagooska matchup, instead of the Engraver you can just send Paradise. But you already have this set up here, right? But you can make a Bagooska here, for example, and keep this engrave. But we just extend further here. We make the equip, go to Necro equip, revive the Engraver by shuffling back a Lacrima, and then we'll make Caesar. Now, from here on out, we're gonna link off the Alexandrite for the Striker Dragon, and then use the Lode effect to get back the Alexandrite. Again, this part would be vulnerable to nib, a bit more punishing than the last line, but if they have the nib, we'll still end on the Fiendsmith in Paradise plus the Roar Banish and an Engrave for follow-up, so we still traded pretty well. Obviously the rest of your hand has to do some lifting here, but obviously you either have hand traps or you have Bystials. If you have Bystials, you don't need to go to revive the Alexandrite in this case. And we just go Spheres here, and that would be the line with Lode and Lacrima. Now, just a quick mention of the shifter line with just the Lode. There are other combinations. If you have access to the Fiendsmith engine and like a Roar also works, but usually one Lode will get you there. So if they shifter you, what you can do is just go Lode, grab the Roar, Roar summons Duston, you link off the Duston, it gets banished, use Requiem, it gets banished, go Lacrima, you not use the effect obviously, the Roar is also banished. And then you just go the second effect of Lode to summon the Alexandrite and overlay those two for a Bagooska. And depending on what your hand is, obviously if your hand is like Engravers and Tracts, that's not as good. But if you have hand traps or like Bystials, you can actually use one Bystial because there's a dimension shifter in the grave. Now if they have a second one and you remove the first shifter, well, tough luck, but you will need to have to do what you have to do to survive, right? But that's a big reason why we run the Alexandrite, just so we have a plan against shifter until that card gets banned. But also it's not that bad in general, just having a plan B. Quick addition to the shifter line, if Bagooska is easily outable from the opponent's deck, let's say if they're on Ryziel and they can just send Aggregator with X Ryziel, you can also just search the Roar, because Roar has the other effect that whatever monster name you've called cannot be destroyed by battle this turn. So sometimes your best hope might just be setting this card, and if your opponent doesn't like back removal in the battle phase, you activate this, call White Duston, summon it out, and they can't run over it by battle. They'd have to pop it somehow. Tenpai can do it, obviously, so Bagooska would be the better line there. But some other decks might just not be able to out this in the battle phase, and then you have a White Duston. They either have to use resources to get rid of it in their main phase 2, or you have a White Duston to combo off on your next turn. So that line of text actually not that irrelevant. Now the last thing I wanted to show you is more advertisement for Alexandrite Dragon, and it's the reason why you want a level 4 that's normal summonable if you have a hand like this. Now we're not cash Tira Fiendsmith, so our Bystial engine often does not work on its own. That's the disadvantage. On the other hand, we have a lot of grind game added with the Bystials. So if we draw Alexandrite and Lubellion, what you can do is normal summon the Alexandrite, link it off for Striker, use the Lubellion to get your Magnamut. Magnamut effect, banish the Alexandrite, use the effect here, get the Lubellion out, Lubellion effect, get the regain. Now you have two choices here. Either you take the simple route and just go for spheres, get a ball drake in the end phase, and then spheres will bounce something and summon a Dru's Worm from the deck, or if they ash it, you still will have the Magnamut to send with the ball drake via regained. But you can also from here go into Moon and just access your Fiendsmith line from here. Go into Requiem, Requiem gets Lacrima, send Engraver, send this away with the equipped Requiem to make Necroquip Princess. Then use the Engraver, shuffling back the Moon, put this in the grave, overlay into Caesar, and in the end phase you will have an add from Magnamut getting the ball drake. Now what you have here is the Caesar. You have the combination of Lacrima and Requiem in the grave for a sending of Fiendsmith in Paradise. You will have a revive for a Magnamut, both giving you a body to block, to send with ball drake, and also an add of a dragon in the end phase for follow-up. And you can use the ball drake, summon itself, draw a card off of regained, and then use the Magnamut or the Lacrima that you'll get back from the grave to send and send something, banish something from your opponent via ball drake. So yeah, if you had Wattail, for example, instead of Alexandrite here, you wouldn't have done much. You would have discarded Lubellion, have the Magnamut, and then do nothing with it. Keep it for the opponent's turn. So much stronger here, obviously. Now, if you have the Primite engine instead, you obviously just summon the White Duston instead of the Alexandrite. But this is pretty nice regarding we've drawn one of the vanillas that does nothing, and we still ended on a pretty formidable board with 3 more cards in hand and another draw in our opponent's turn. Alright, that's it for the video. Thanks for watching, everyone. I hope you liked this version more than the last one, or maybe you liked the last one. Leave a comment below and see you next time.